I'm very grateful for what Kriti has introduced as part of this evolving exploration. And apropos of this, our final presentation of the day will be with my wonderful friend and colleague, Rhonda Magee, who is a professor of law, a mindfulness teacher, a multiracial justice educator and advocate, and a longtime practitioner. And Rhonda, there you are.
Here I am.
You look beautiful.
You do too. And
thank you.
This group is beautiful to be here. Well, I am so incredibly honored. I see Dekala's beautiful face, having just once again appreciated yours and Kriti's, and of course Heather's presentations earlier today, and being held so beautifully by this community, led with such care, compassion, grace, and inspiration by my dear teacher and friend, Roshi Joan. So I am beyond honored to present or to share a few words with you today. Like so many of us who prepare for these things, I have some PowerPoints. But before we get into PowerPoints, yes, we've had a few minutes to breathe, but there's been so much that's come up. I want to sort of invite us all to take a moment together, feel the ground beneath us. Just pause right where we are. You know, if you are near where there's a source of natural light coming in, maybe a window, maybe lift your eyes, take in a little bit of what we can see, how we can allow ourselves in that process to feel what Roshi was describing about inactive sense of self, that we are really a part of this environment. So just taking a few conscious breaths. Breathing in, feeling the whole body in this moment. Feeling, yes, the body as a whole resting right here. So points of contact between the body and a cushion if you're sitting on a cushion, the chair if you're sitting in a chair. Just noticing one or two points of contact and allowing yourself to feel the support. Just right here, right now, very gentle, very subtly opening up to the reality that if you're here right now, you're in a place that's safe enough, right? If you're here right now, you're in a place that's resourced enough. So just maybe on the next in-breath, sensing into what is well within you. And I've already got one hand on my heart. Please join me if you feel that might be in any way of benefit. Just placing that warmth, that sense of body-to-body connection right here on our own hearts, maybe both hands on the heart, or maybe the other hand just beneath the belly button. My students sometimes say this feels to them like you're giving ourselves a hug. So just, if you're willing, and it's totally up to you, no judgment, breathing in and breathing out, feeling our soft bellies, our warm hearts. And as we breathe in and out, feeling the ground beneath us, feeling the way that the caress of the breath across the nostrils down into the body as we breathe. And exhale, allowing ourselves to just feel the gentle rising and falling of the diaphragm, the inner organs of the torso, just as we breathe. And in doing that, feeling the reality. This is not a concept, that we are always already of and a part of this that we call the environment, that we are tempted to think of as separate from ourselves. Always already a part of this. So I think I want to begin with this poem. We can continue in a sense meditating through this. This is a poem that I wrote for the beginning of the book that I published a couple of years ago. It's called The Inner Work of Racial Justice, Healing Ourselves and Strengthening and Transforming Our Communities Through Mindfulness. And so some of you have heard me speak about this and have heard this poem, or maybe have done me the honor of reading it. But I'll offer it as a part of a sort of a way of transitioning from this meditative moment of practice into our meditative reflections together. Seamless thread. It's all practice. I'm titling this, or I titled it, If the Path Could Speak. Beneath these words rests the awareness of generations, and of generations, and of the generations that have come before. The awareness that each one of us is a vital part of the earth that we call home, is of the wind, the rain, and yes, even the fire. And so we inherently belong. If the path could speak, it would say, we must assert that which already exists deep within us, namely a sense of kinship with all those beings of all sorts, colors, shapes, heritages. We must assert that which already exists within us, namely a sense of kinship with all those with whom we share this earth. On repeat, in every language, unceasingly. Dear ones, I come to you. Thank you so much, first of all, for your practice, for your presence, for your wisdom and insight. That which brought you into this circle is no small thing, and I honor it and respect it. So may, in whatever words I am able to share in the time that we have, may this deep respect that is in my heart for you somehow find its way into the words. So that I feel a little, I want to invite or ask for your support in helping me find just the words right now, because I'm a little overwhelmed actually by the tremendous interconnecting, intersecting, interlocking, profound threads, rivers of wisdom, practice, insight, right? This ocean that we're now kind of sitting beside. I imagine us almost in a circle or sitting together. This ocean now. these interweaving ideas around what climate justice equitably conceived of and pursued. What does equitable, fair climate justice look like? And what's the relationship between that objective and our practices? At this time, coming as we are, wherever we are, from whatever different, all of our different radically diverse, differentiated backgrounds and experiences. No two of us alike, really. What does it look like for us to step into our power to make the most of the moments that we have, the choices that we have the opportunity to exercise, to make the world a little bit cleaner, safer, more sustainable during these, let's just name it, perilous times. So we are met at a moment of, obviously, of both challenge. The word crisis sometimes seems a little overused in our discourse, but at this moment, in this time, no, interlocking crises, absolutely. The planet's on fire. Some of our neighborhoods or regions are on fire right now. And if not now, we're predicting them just on the other side of the hills. We're preparing for them, right? So this climate is trying to tell us something, I think, and we know this. We who are here know this. This thing we're calling the climate, this thing we're calling the environment, this body, this earth, right? This closed to open, open to closed system, however we conceive of that, it's all here. No duality. It's trying to tell us something. It's trying to wake us up, no question. When you see both what's happening in the environment, the coronavirus pandemic, worldwide impact, not yet over. Interlocking with what in the United States we're calling this racial reckoning, what you might call it a pandemic of fear and trepidation around present day consequences of historical identity-based suffering. Present day consequences of that and how that intersects with climate and other forms of moral distress and suffering. So I come to you just like you in a certain sense, just one little human being here in the city of San Francisco, California. But by naming that, I will say that in and of itself, that reflects, and certainly in my own experience, it reflects a certain amount of privilege, economic privilege, to be living here in San Francisco right now and be living well enough, safe enough. So I come to you with some humility around that, because I know that from where I am, although I have, I am, for those of you who may be in any way sight impaired, I'll say I'm a kind of a brown-skinned, cisgender female woman of a certain age. I'm going to name it, 53 years old on the planet, born in 1967. Okay, I think it's important to name these arcs of time that we're working with. Born in Kinston, North Carolina, a town in the historically segregated, white supremacy infused southern part of the United States, and into a family riven with all kinds of trauma as a consequence of so many things. not least of which white supremacy and its legacies, but also capitalism as we've been describing it and its implications. So impoverishment linked with racial subordination, intersecting those intersections. And as a woman born into a family where the women in my family, when my grandmother had cleaned houses for other people, that was the kind of work that people like me were supposed to be doing forever. Okay. And yet I saw my grandmother get up every morning, speak now a little bit of what Heather was talking about. How do we broaden what it looks like when we think of wisdom teachers for these moments? I think of my grandmother, a woman who was born in 1906, a generation or two maybe removed from actual enslavement in the United States, and therefore her aunties and grandma and these folks had been enslaved. Okay, so my grandmother had touched the hands of people who had been enslaved, and of course mine have touched hers. So really, we're not as far away from that history as we sometimes think. But what I saw my grandmother do was get up every day. So before she went off to clean those houses, she grounded herself in practice. So what I want to offer again is a reminder that everything that we have been talking about, and when we talk about how we are privileged in this community and in the communities of practice that we're connected to have the support of a lineage. My lineage is Buddhist, but it's also infused with a kind of prophetic Christianity. That was what my grandmother was sitting with when she got up before dawn and would engage in her own centering prayer and scriptural reads and worship and really get herself grounded in a sense of her power. And then come out of that room, I would see the light coming out from under the door of her bedroom. And we all knew as kids, when she's in that moment, this is a do not disturb zone. She was getting herself ready for the day. Nothing glamorous about her day. Nobody offering her any particular rewards. Okay. But this was what she had developed as a discipline to support her in kindling the fire of her own light, her own power, to sustain herself and help do what she could to sustain family and community. She had become a spiritual teacher by that time, even though she was also cleaning houses, right? So when I think of the power of spiritual practice and the radical diversity of spiritual practices and teachers that we need to draw on in this moment of waking up, I think of people like my grandma and mother, and I invite us in this moment to think of these unconventional members of our own, let's say, broad lineages, our communities, the teachers we've come across that we've been inspired by, from families that look like ours, from families that don't. We're human beings who have inherited much in the way of those who have come before and learned something and shared something about it. I'm thinking right now of a teacher in the South African context that I came across a couple of years ago when I was privileged to go to South Africa and participate in a conference on mindfulness in an African context. And those of us who were speaking were privileged to sit with and learn from a teacher by the name of Baba Mandaza Kadimwa, whose teachings I feel like are just in this conversation because his main point was over and over again that our job is to heal the separations, all of them, starting first and foremost with the separations and notion of separating this of our bodies with this planet. And of course, the separations from each other. that show up as segregation, that show up as elitism, that show up as the border discourse, that show up as fascism, echo and otherwise. Heal the separations. And so I heard that as a thread through so much of what we heard today. Heal the separations with ourselves, hold ourselves accountable for the ways we are missing in action for ourselves. Y'all know what I'm talking about? And again, with gentleness and with compassion and with love, because we need that, because we are all carrying wounds, so many. So doing our work of healing so as to be able to be more accountable to ourselves and to our own commitments that we make, the promises we make, the way we want to live. And through that work to be more accountable to others. But there's a lot of healing that I think for me has had to come from that. I, as I mentioned, came up in a home where there was a lot of different kinds of trauma, including alcoholism, sexual abuse, and again, immersed in, a world completely shaped by white supremacy. It was a completely segregated place. It was 1972 when I went to kindergarten in Kinston, North Carolina. Brown versus Board of Education had not arrived at that school, though the case came down in 54, right? Brown versus Board had been a decision on the Supreme Court of the United States' books, outlawing segregation for a generation, and it had not touched the elementary schools in Kinston, North Carolina, where I went, okay? There had to then be a subsequent set of lawsuits, and a famous lawsuit called Swan versus City of Mecklenburg, which was a North Carolina-based decision in which the Supreme Court finally said, the time for all deliberate speed and for desegregation is now. That's when busing happened. That's when real integration started to happen. And it happened for a generation, because by the time I graduated high school in 1985, Supreme Court was gearing up to tell everybody that we'd done all we could and that we could all kind of back away from these consent decrees and all of these efforts of busing, right? Y'all, this is part of the history we have lived, most of us on this call. We saw the dismantling of some of those systems of oppression, some of those systems of abject hierarchy that rendered some of our communities less safe, some of us more vulnerable to all manner of illness and injury, environmental and otherwise. So we saw the dismantling of some of that. And then we saw the kind of resurgence of it when, again, the powers that be. So part of my message is this: I'm a law professor, I can tell you the courts are not going to save us. They might help us for a time. There are times this is not to abandon the courts, but the courts are not going to save us. Just know that. I can tell you this as a law professor for many years. The courts will ebb and flow, and they are political animals, despite the mantra of independence, right? The judiciary is an independent branch. We all know how political they are. And right now, they've been captured by a certain view. So what I want to just share with you is that my own experience so beautifully amplifies, I think, or I feel like my own experience is reminding me of the wisdom of so much of what's been shared. The grief work that we have to do. I've been doing some grief for many, many years. I have been about the business of turning toward rather than away from difficult issues like racial injustice, racial inequity, and creating spaces where people from different backgrounds can come together and explore how racism has affected us. And that is painful work. And there is a lot of grief that comes up in that work. Just like climate awareness work is painful and a lot of grief comes up. So much of what has been shared already, I when I hear about echo anxiety, I wonder, why don't we have a similar term for like racial anxiety or like ratio anxiety? Because it's in all of us. You know, we are, and maybe it's because it's so baked into our culture to have this anxiety around race and racism that nobody knows how to deal with well, and that keeps us going back to polarization. We come together, we go back to polarization. We have these cycles, it seems. I feel like maybe because it's so baked in, we don't have a really nuanced language for it. And I feel like one of the things that we're struggling with in this moment, especially in the United States, is this, you know, the fact that over the last year, there has been this effort to kind of introduce language or broaden the conversation about race. And so something called critical race theory was somehow plucked out of obscurity and presented as this, you know, the latest boogeyman. I think I could say a lot more about critical race theory than I will here, because I am a law professor and I happen to know quite a lot about what that theory actually is. This is very technical, jurisprudential. It's a jurisprudential view. It's a view about what justice might look like coming from the minds of Black and brown and intellectuals of all colors, frankly, including whites. Okay, it's a legal theory coming from this courageous willingness to look at our history around race and racism and to explore what the consequences of that might be for us as we try to enact law and policy today. That's what like critical race theory at its origin was. And it's now been presented. Now, just about any time one talks about race at all, someone's accusing them of talking about critical race theory. Multiracial education, which is a separate thing, people are calling that critical race theory. Looking at our history at all, people call that critical race theory. Looking at white experience and exploring what whiteness might look like in all of us. Because if you live in America, you're going to encounter some whiteness. You don't have to be a white person to know something and imbibe some whiteness, if you will. People call that critical race theory. Anything that has to do with race now, we're calling critical race theory. My friends, my dear friends, I will just tell you, there are politics at play there. There's politics at play. There's the effort to manipulate us at play there. There's money being made by this. Okay. So, for me, coming back to our practice, my dear Roshi mentioned right view. How do we really, what does right view mean during these times? Yes, that view of interconnectedness that our practices can deliver us over to. Hopefully the moment of practice that we engaged in as we started this talk helped remind us, right? Help us remember in our body what this concept of right view kind of feels like sometimes. Does that make sense? As we sit and we breathe and we feel the radical interconnectedness of this body with that so-called air and with the air that you're breathing. Where is the separation, actually? Who said we were somehow so separate? Who said that our bodies were so different that we couldn't understand each other? Really? When we're all made of more than 70% water, we're all exchanging oxygen and carbon dioxide. We all know what a hurt feeling looks like, feels like, a slight feels like, right? We know what hunger is. We all have to go to the bathroom and say, like, we have the same human experience, really. And so the idea that we're so separated, that we can't barely even empathize, we got to work so hard, really? You know, it's true that we have different experiences and we're not the same in that sense, but we have over-imbibed these narratives of separation. And so I think right view is about looking again, respect. That's another, right? The origin of that concept of word, respect. To look again, to see each other rightly, as as part of this beautiful environment, and to see that interdependence, interconnectedness, enacted self, right? Self coming up out of this experience, self having some racial content, all of ourselves, not just me. That's what the whiteness conversation is about. Well, if race is a real thing, if Rhonda has some racial experience, maybe so does Joan. What is that? Can we be curious about that? That's really all it is. It's not really that scary. Doesn't have to be. Right view, right intent. Can we say more? Please forgive me for just riffing here. Right intention. Right intention. Whew. For so many of us people of color, I will say, we walk into meditation halls and we look around and we are not sure that we're welcome. We just aren't sure. We've been in places where we've been minoritized, like one of the few, one of the only, and we have felt that sense of not being safe so often, or we've been ignored in a kind of a chilly way, you know, where nobody's actually said anything unpleasant, but they also didn't say anything particularly welcoming either. And so I want to just call out, like, being intentional about welcome. Several of us have been writing about making refuge, right? We talk about taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha. Some few of us came together a few years ago and explored the concept of making refuge as part of what we might invite ourselves to explore as we do this work of repairing and reconciling, healing the separations, okay? How do we make refuge? How do we make welcome in our places of meditation practice, spiritual practice, in our communities? I walk around this beautiful mountain here. I happen to live on one of the hills in San Francisco. It's called Mount Davidson. Originally, it was called Blue Mountain, so I like that. I call it Blue Mountain. I'm one of the few Black bodies in this neighborhood, okay? For a variety of reasons that we could unpack, having to do with the fact that as a result of the advocacy, maybe of people like you all, some of you, or maybe your parents, some of them, or right? Because of some of those changes that came out of the civil rights movement, I had an opportunity to go to the University of Virginia. I seized it. I studied there. I took 3 degrees, law and graduate school and this and that. Education is one of the great dividers though, isn't it? In terms of socioeconomics, in terms of so many things. So it siphons off some people of color who end up able to live in communities like this and feel at home, except for the fact we're the only one often. So in my walks that I do around this neighborhood, I'm one of those people that believes that part of what I'm here to do is connect by saying hello. It's maybe partly because I come from the South, I don't know. But I find that people are surprised that I'm speaking to them. And I'm just thinking of this one couple, a white, racialized, I say racialized sometimes to just remind us that these are just ideas that we have, right? We're not necessarily essentially different, right? There's no essential difference between us, y'all. I'm just saying that again. But there was this white couple who I've seen several times on the walk. And just, there was a sort of little victory yesterday because on my walk, the first time I saw them, I often see them twice on the same walk. I wave again, they kind of didn't notice me or respond. Maybe they were startled that I'm still doing this. And so when I saw them the second time, they kind of made a special point of like waving from across the street. And so I say that to say, you know, we practice and we make, you know, we make our efforts. We think of things like this as small things. I don't think they're small, right? We think of Kritsy's beautiful invitations that we find these small groups and we come together and we listen to each other as maybe a small thing, not small, not small. So bringing intentionality to how we are in the world. Am I gonna be that light? Am I gonna risk looking a little foolish, speaking to people, waving at them, shining the light of friendship and metta in a walk, in the grocery store, when I'm driving the car, whatever it is, right? Am I going to risk feeling a little, yeah, I will do that. Would that mean many people won't speak back? Sure. Eventually though, somebody will be like, well, here she is. Apparently she's going to speak. So let's speak to her first this time. No small thing, right? Intentionality in how we are in the world, leading then to how we choose to spend our money, how we relate to the environment. Right? Speech, action, livelihood. Right? Deep ethics in this practice. Our dear Roshi talks about that morality so often, moral distress, moral courage, moral imagination. We need a grand moral reimagination. And I think we can have it. And I think some of the ways of getting there have been uncovered over the course of this day. Having that courage to look at where racial inequity is and climate inequity is in our neighborhoods, and realizing that we all have some work to do, but we can only do what we're here to do, staying in our lane, not taking up somebody else's ministry. But coming together and learning, powerful teachings from Dekala, this brilliant being over there. Dekala, my sister, every time, like, brilliance, right? On all of these different levels about what's going on. And the challenge and the opportunity of bringing together people across different faiths. I will say I am so into this ecumenical cross-faith conversation as a Christian, Buddhist, just humanist, spiritual person who loves humanity and loves life. And I am very aware that in the United States, for example, we're still so segregated racially that I think racial equity is a hard conversation to have in our churches, for example, because there's so much to unpack around the role of Christianity, for example, in oppression. And even today, like white nationalism and Christianity are kind of in some ways fused. So we tread lightly, but I think for me, the right effort, mindfulness, and concentration, that the whole ethical path keeps me hopeful, is a source of resilience, is a source of courage. And so, I didn't even open up my slides, I think, y'all. We need to pause and open up for Q&A. I will make the slides available. I think I really just wanted to underscore that in terms of solutions and practices, you've heard so many. If I could just add, again, you may have heard this, but research has shown again and again that certain types of contact across groups that are ostensibly different. It's called an intergroup contact theory. So those of you who are research oriented can research it. Gordon Allport was the first social psychologist. Someone's thanking me for not using slides, right? Gordon Allport. And again, this will all be available to those who are interested afterwards. And you can always find me at rhondavmagee.com. I'm happy to answer any questions too. Happy to stay in contact. But these social psychologists, and I studied social psychology and sociology at the graduate level before going to law school, researched for years before advocating for desegregation, coming back to that old history that's still right here with us. They researched just to be able to present some data. Yes, if we desegregate the military, there are going to be some positive consequences. If we desegregate school, there will be. Here's why. Coming together in ways that are supported by higher ups, right? Where the institution is saying, yes, we can do this, and it's a value of ours, right? Making the value of coming together across difference explicit. Some people say talking up diversity, right? But bringing people together from different diverse backgrounds with relatively defined roles where we work together in explicit ways. Think of a basketball team from different backgrounds. Think of a, a music band with people from, there are reasons why this works. And I'm here because that worked. Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, we all came up and got where we got because intergroup contact can work. That history, all of the research has been sort of thrown in the dustbin in the effort to revivify this idea that we cannot work together. We have to be polarized. You got to have your nationalism. I got to have mine. No, we don't have to live like that. And I think we all know that, or else we wouldn't be here. So I just want to say that when I hear coming together in the way that Kriti describes, when I hear all of the different wise ways of working with our anxiety, our grief, again, the particular book that I wrote was specifically aimed at giving us support for going into group settings and finding a way to do this work together. The inner work of racial justice, some of you can see it, healing ourselves. I mean, this book was sort of, I wrote it as a kind of, resource. But those things that we do are the sorts of things that the researchers predicted could minimize our biases, could help us see and understand each other in our whole being and body, could help us heal the separations in Baba Kadimwa's words. And so, my dears, my beautiful beings and friends on this journey, I offer the heartfelt wish that in our own personal work, in our interpersonal ways of being with each other, let's say hello to each other when we see each other on the street, y'all. And in the work that we do, right? Systemically, collectively, changing laws and policies, right? Starting right where we are, doing what we can, but knowing that if we do what we can together, it can be a big thing. May we heal these separations and may we find the power within us to reconcile and put us on a path toward a sustainable future for all of us. Thank you all so very much.
Oh, Rhonda. I think you said to a few of us, it was a good preachment. And it was beautiful. Thank you. My bones are singing. I am so completely grateful. You know what I'd like to do, because we just have 5 minutes to end this session. I'm sure there are many questions and perspectives bubbling up in our macro community, but I'm going to ask for Kriti and Dekila for final words, you for final words, and then we're going to go into a short conclusion. But just to say, when you said the courts aren't going to do it, I was like, that's too bad, but you're right. It's really so up to us. It is so up to us. Just as each of these remarkable women have made so clear. And I also want to just say, today's program was very intentional. There are many prophetic voices that come out of men's bodies. Men have done a world of good. Women have made some mischief that hasn't always been so skillful. So, let's not just binaryize this, the gender situation. But it is to say, to hear the prophetic voices of you four extraordinary women, lawyer, climate scientist, climate activist, and recovering political mover and shaker. What we're hearing, I feel, is echoing into the future of how women are going to carry principle to action combined with love and compassion in the future. And by the way, I'm sitting here in this cabin at 9,400 feet, and to the right of me, and I just want to introduce you, is, I know, is one of the change makers in process. This is Sering Wangmo from Dolpo, Nepal, who, like your family, Rhonda, You know, when she was a child was herding yaks, and now she's getting her master's of public health at the University of Washington to go back to Nepal and deliver, and working with women in a transformative way. And across the table from me is Dr. Wendy Lau, another change maker and Buddhist, you know, with that same feeling that our work is before us and we do it in relationship. And that is so important. It is no longer the Lone Ranger. It is a path of deep connection and relationality, including to this very earth. And I have to say, I'm just going to call on first Kriti, then Dekila, then you, and then the four vows and conclude. But I just love my sisters. Thank you, including the two sitting here. Dekila.
I'm just I'm vibrating after Rhonda spoke. In this different level of energy. I think what, you know, as Roshi said, we don't want to fall into the binaries, right? Especially of gender or race, as Rhonda said, that these are all created constructs. I was just so affected when she said money is made by this, because that's exactly right. These are all systems that were designed to benefit very few, you know, off the backs of so many. At the same time, for me, you know, earlier when I was talking about hope and courage, I have turned to women for hope and courage. There have been men who have supported me along the way. My spouse, I should mention, my wonderful spouse being one of them. But it seems to me that there is something about the role that women play right now and moving into the future that is absolutely integral. You know, when Heather asked, who do you trust? Honestly, when it, you know, being in America, who do I trust? It's Black women. Black women, to me, have never been wrong about where we are in the country. They have never been wrong about the history we're in, the trajectory we're in, right? Politically, socially, in terms of justice, you know, in terms of the morality that we've all talked about. And I think women in general, to me, is who I turn to, because we, at the end of the day, you know, we know how to build home. We have been building home and carrying homes everywhere we've gone, whether we've done it for our children, our mothers, our sisters, whether we've done it for pets, whether we've done it for our community. And, you know, some famous guy once upon a time apparently said there are only two stories that humanity has: of leaving home and coming home. And I have to say that's such a load of BS, because the story that matters at the end of the day is the story about creating home. And that's what all of us do. And we are here as community to create home. Thank you so much for having me. I love being in this sisterhood.
Oh my gosh, making home. Sorry, John, did you want to say something?
No, you go, Kriti.
I couldn't agree more. I am finding myself, I value all friendships, and there is something about friendship with people in female bodies that is definitely energizing, empowering me in ways I did not know was possible, including talking about joy and pleasure. You know, my entry into the emotional landscape was with Joanna Macy talking about grief. And as referred to earlier, the joy of being together is really empowering me these days. I will end with an example of a student of our Sangha. Her name is Nobuko Hori. She, 1 month ago, she didn't think of herself as a change maker. But we discussed in our Sangha, I'm telling you, power of community here. We ended up discussing a documentary about Line 3, where Indigenous women leaders have called all Sanghas, all allies, to show up with their bodies to oppose the tar sands pipeline, which is equivalent of 50 coal power plants. Nobuko saw that She called her two sisters, her friends from different sanghas around the country. She's a network and weaver. She showed up. She was not going to take an arrestable action, but she ended up being locked to machinery. I will not name the number of hours. I know their court case is still due, but collectively, these people kept the pipeline construction, stopped the pipeline construction for 2 full days, 2 full working days. I'm so darn proud. Some changes happen slowly and some changes happen quickly when you find yourself with right people. Do your grief work, do your pleasure work, dance away, sing away, and then our showing up becomes powerful when we are with the right people. Find your tribe, your little tribe. Okay. We need
Hi,
all
tribe. Thank you,
Thank
my
you.
sisters. Thank you, brothers and sisters from all over the world. I'm just so grateful. And in the spirit of this practice, we conclude this day where I will say the 4 vows of the Bodhisattvas, and to just understand that we are, in a way, a community that lives within the heart and hands of these vows. Creations are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to transform them. Reality is boundless. I vow to perceive it. The awakened way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. The assignment might seem impossible, but it's exactly what we are given and we are rising to. Thank you for your practice. And again, your donations are shared with this remarkable community of women, and we so appreciate all of you, and thank you for those who are able to give. Wendy, come here.
Thank you, everyone. It's a joy, such a joy. Thank you, dear Roshi.
Oh, I love you, my
Love you too.
sisters. Okay, let's do it.